friends and family, my peasants, groundlings, lurkers, and lover, welcome to Hang with Hilary. I'm so glad you are all here. Welcome. And here's my co-host, David Maldo, straight from the lion's mouth.
Hey, I'm David. But it's not about
David,
me. It's usually
it's
about
always
me,
about
but
you.
this is the Hilary show.
It is our show. It's Hanging with Hilary. So come, let's hang. David Maldo is my co-host. He's my Ed McMahon, my Twitch, my Paul Schaefer, my right-hand guy here running all the magic you see here. So if you're joining because you follow Sign with Robert, the sign language program, you're in the right place. Please follow. If you're interested in learning, you can go ahead and see the video link to learn sign language. All right, and subscribe so you'll be able to see future shows, because next week we have Paul Racy from Sound of Metal on Amazon Studios, who played Joe, has been winning tons of awards, so you're not going to want to miss that. On February 17th, we are going to have Darius DeHaas, Broadway star and the voice of Shy Baldwin on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And on March 3rd, we're going to have Rosa Lee Tim join us, who is an amazing deaf performer. She's there's no words. So you have to watch. So subscribe so you never miss a show.
Who do you got booking guests for us? This is incredible. Like name after name after name. Do you have some sort of agency that's working behind the scenes for us?
I think it's the power of the pandemic. I'm going to call it pandemic power. So, it's something that, David, I mean, aren't you finding opportunities like popping up more and more?
Well, when you're doing things over video, yeah, during the pandemic, that is what everyone's into. So
everyone's into, and including, like, this is brand new for me, so I appreciate you joining and watching. If you see in the chat that there's Nightbot, that's David's little trick of what he did. It automatically pops up if you do exclamation point in any of the commands. It'll instantly give you a list of things to that you can do. So go ahead and try it out. Do exclamation point, no space, and commands, and you'll see a whole bunch of fun things pop up.
Hopefully Nightbot will get smarter as we go on.
Nightbot's you made him pretty smart. Well, people don't want to hear me blab. They want to hear my guest who is on today, who I am so excited to introduce him to those of you who do not know, the fabulous DeAndre James Allen-Toole. He is incredible composer, and we've worked together, and now I'm a lifelong fan and friend. And he's not only a nice guy, but he is incredibly generous and talented. So DeAndre was originally from Detroit. I am reading this just because he's done so much. I'd never be able to remember this. All right, so he is originally from Detroit. He graduated with a BA in music composition from Columbia College, working with Kubilay Uner, who was my longtime composer, who actually recommended DeAndre to me when I was looking for something, and Kubi wasn't available. So he was the top of his class. He was selected as a 2016 Game Audio Network Guild Scholar before earning his MFA. He interned with Mac Quayle before filling his awarded spot in the Television Academy Foundation's summer internship program. He was a 2020 Sundance Institute Film Music and Sound Design Lab Fellow, which is not an easy feat. And he also was the 69th Primetime Emmy Awards trophy presenter. He is currently working as an assistant for Jongnicm Bontemps. I hope I said that right. So without any further ado, please give a warm welcome to my friend, DeAndre Allen-Toole. There he is. Where's our applause? There we go. There we go. That's the applause I was looking for. DeAndre, hi, welcome. Where are you dialing in from tonight?
I am dialing in from my bedroom studio here in my home in Sherman Oaks in the Valley.
In California in the United States. So
Where's our
welcome.
applause?
I'm so glad you're here. The one thing that DeAndre and most composers, you guys work solitary most of the time, right? So this is a change to be in our studio, our virtual studio, I should say. So all right, so I'm curious. I'm going to jump right into some questions. So what originally inspired you to become a composer?
Well, you know, music has long been just a part of my background, coming from a family of musicians. So like I just grew up around a whole bunch of instruments. Nobody in my family had any sort of formal training, but everyone was always super passionate. So I came from a family of guitarists and organists and church musicians and just like, you know, band session players and things like that. But, you know, I immediately started taking an interest in music in a way that felt very personal just because I grew up with synesthesia. So for me, music was always associated with like this really strong sensation of color. So much so when I would hear a piece of music, I would ask like my parents, you know, like, hey, can you play that red song again or this blue song again? And they would always look at me confused, like, what are you talking about? And I was just like, well, don't you see it? And like for me, like every piece of music was just evocative, and it's just like I just had imagery associated with it. And then so naturally as I got older, that sort of led me to think like, well, like when I'm looking at like a piece of a film, or if I'm playing a video game, sometimes like the visuals in my mind, they sort of like already sound like something. There's an idea here that I sort of want to pursue. And sure, a part of that is just based off like the synesthesia, but now part of it is like based off my own like natural curiosity and musical instincts. And it's just sort of like bridging the gap between like this instinctual sort of like relationship I have with music because of the synesthesia and, you know, things that I picked up over the years from my family and just noodling around with instruments, and finally being fortunate enough to, you know, have formal training in college, because that was the first time I actually had access to actual like music education. So
That's not
I
even fair. You have a superpower. I want that. I'm you know, I'm learning how to play guitar and I'm trying to learn music theory and I can't see it.
It is
That's
a superpower. I
that's
remember I did some
incredible.
research a
That's
ways back into
incredible.
synesthesia, and it is magical because they just assume that's how everyone experiences music. And synesthesia is when you experience two senses at once, right, DeAndre?
yeah, they're sort of linked, and there's many different types of synesthesia. I believe like the sound color synesthesia that I have is specifically called like chronesthesia, I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe that's correct.
I think you're right. You know what? Our TV is getting bad reception here, so we're gonna have you set up a clip because I want to share some of DeAndre's work with you. So we're actually going to see a clip of a short scene that DeAndre scored from the short film Sisters, directed by Sarah Noland. So do you want to set up what we're going to be watching here?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So the scene that we're about to watch is pretty much dead in the middle of the film, and so the film is really just this really intimate piece about like two sisters who have been separated for some time, and they're recently coming back together in the same home to sort of process the death of their mother, and the relationship that they both had with their mother sort of made a strain in their own relationship. So they're in this awkward place trying to find out, is there room to sort of reconcile their differences and sort of understanding their dynamic and sort of exploring their shared history with this person that they lost, sharing their loss, sharing the grief of their mother, but also sharing the grief and the loss of their own relationship and trying to make amends. And then so at this part of the movie, we are coming off of a moment where they've had a deep talk, and there might be a sense of understanding, but everything is still a little bit suspended. So there's a strong theme in the beginning of the movie, but in this section, it's sort of washed out as more textual, and it's basically because we're still waiting to see how things are going to land. So it's almost like we're floating over the scene, waiting to see what's going to happen. We don't actually quite get there. But let's just watch the clip.
Well, thank you. So, David, let's take us to the screening room and we'll go ahead and watch Sisters, scored by DeAndre James Allen-Toole. And sound, please.
You weren't supposed to know. I didn't want you to know. Go. How's your hand?
DeAndre, that is so beautiful and haunting that for those of you who are just joining us, DeAndre scored that incredible, gorgeous cue from the short film Sisters, directed by Sarah Nolan. So, wow. What was the experience of working with the director, and how did you come to the concept of how you were going to score this? What's your approach?
Well, it was really interesting because at this point, Sarah and I had worked on one project together. It was called The Horseman, and we did that, I want to say a year before we did Sisters. And what was cool about Sisters is that I got to come on much earlier in the process. Like, we were talking about this as she was formulating the concept of the story and all these different things. So I came in at a point where she was just making together, I don't know what the technical term would be, but it was sort of like a PDF document that had just like, images and synopsis and like all these different elements, like where they wanted to shoot, like potential like casting of characters, blah, 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 blah. So it was just very early in the process. So I was able to start tinkering with like just certain sounds and certain ideas, nothing specifically written to picture, of course, because there wasn't picture at this point. Really just starting a dialogue around, okay, like, well, what do we want this music to sort of achieve, and just trying to, get into that world early. So by the time that I did get the picture, it was already like, okay, I'm intimately familiar with the characters and the world, and now it's just really responding to the visuals that are in front of me, but I'm already well informed by the trajectory of the story and where we need to go. And so being able to come on that early in the process was new for me, because normally when I come on, there's usually, footage, and there's already temp, and there's all these different things, but it's just like, no, it's just sort of like a sandbox just to try so many different things. And I just feel as if like I and Sarah really responded to that, that freedom of just being able to, try things and not feel pressured by any sort of like expectations on the score. Because she was very reluctant about telling me what to do. But at the same time, it's like, of course, I still have to serve the picture. And so like, I need your input. But it was very much a conversation that lasted the entire scope of the project. So I was very grateful for it.
Well, you're getting compliments in the chat that Shauna Baca, who's a filmmaker herself, says it was an engaging tone, haunting, beautiful tone. So I wanted to throw that out. Thank you, Shauna. I want to share some more of DeAndre's work and to actually take us to our cozy sound stage. So David, let's hop us over to the sound stage. So DeAndre, for those of people who've never been in a sound stage, give us a tour. Let us know what is this place?
Well, this is the place that I would usually be sitting while like an engineer is probably working their magic, and there are instrumentalists playing my music in another room where they're being recorded. And usually I'm a booth person. I can conduct, but that's not where I feel most comfortable. Like I think I have a good set of ears. I personally do say so myself. So I like to really just be dialed into what's happening and making sure that we have the takes that we need. So usually I'm here taking notes, making sure that we don't need to run certain passages again, and just having fun. Probably eating booth snacks because that's one of the best parts of it.
Lots of snacks. Now, what kind of snacks can we expect to see like at a mixing session or a spotting? Or yes.
Or even just recording. Well, when I was a runner at the bridge recording that used to be operating in Glendale, we used to get portals all the time, and those like cheese danishes were bomb. Like anytime that I had to run to portals to get those pastries, it was a good day. It didn't matter who was recording. I was just glad to have the pastries.
And for those of you who don't know, Porto's is a very popular chain restaurant here in Southern California. I think they may have a handful, but it's Brazilian food. Is that correct?
I think it's like maybe like Cuban.
Cuban food. My apologies. Cuban food. I can't go there because the line's too long. There's lines that go on for miles around the block. All right, enough about Porto's because we can't do virtual food yet, although we can work on it. So go ahead and introduce this next cue you're going to play for us called Quietus.
Oh, sure. So this piece of music I actually wrote when I was still in grad school. Actually, it was one of the first pieces of music that I recorded in grad school. And I was working with my professor, Kubi, and along with the rest of my classmates, just working on like one of the first assignments. And I really just look back fondly on this piece because it was just like one of the first times where it's just like, wow, like I scored something and it actually came out well, and I'm recording it for the first time. Like I had never gone through that experience of making the parts and giving it to the instrumentalist. In this case, it was a cellist, and just letting the magic happen. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Of course, it wasn't tied to anything personally that I did as far as like a project is concerned, but it's just a piece of music that I'm still proud of this day.
I don't know how you hit it out of the park on your first go, and it definitely was not beginner's luck because your work has just gotten continued at this level and keeps exceeding itself. So without any more delay, David, go ahead and let's hear Quietus. You just like to break our hearts into a million pieces, don't you? That's incredible. It was so beautiful. Now I'm curious, those were all live instruments. That was not
Nope, nope. That was all a mock-up except for the cello. The cello is the only recording instrument.
oh, and you know I love a good cello. I love a good cello. That was beautiful. So has it like did that help you get other work? I know you use that as a demo piece. Did it go anywhere after?
You know, right now it's still just here in my personal library. So it's available if anybody ever is interested in this track, you know,
Oh,
get
see? Yeah, there you go. It's like if someone's like, I love that piece, I need it for my film or I need it for my video. You can license that from DeAndre. We're going to talk about licensing in a moment, which is pretty important because it supports um, musicians and well, I guess we could, this is a good place. We can actually talk about it now. So all right, let's say somebody is listening or watching and they do want to use your music. What is usually the process one goes about of licensing a piece of music like that?
well, you know, it's just sort of like, I guess just sort of figuring out like how you want to, because you know there are different types of licensing deals. Like you know, there's an exclusive license where you're just asking like, hey, I want to use this piece of music, and I only want this piece of music to exist with this project. You still own it, but like I have the rights to use it, and blah 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 blah. And then also, of course, there are non-exclusive licenses where many different people or projects could potentially use this piece of music. And then of course there are like licensing agreements where it's just like, okay, it's exclusive for like a set term, like maybe it's exclusive for like 2 years, and then that music becomes available to license to other parties. And so it's just drawing up an agreement that works to the benefit of both parties when it comes to licensing. And it's just great, and especially when you want to use a piece of music, but you don't necessarily have the money to maybe just buy the rights outright. You know, it's a way to still get what you want while still like, you know, actually well, not compensating, but you know, actually just making sure the composer still gets like a fair part of the deal here. Because there have been many situations, well, not many, but there have definitely been major situations where I have started a project and then all of a sudden I found out, I'm getting how much, and you want to own this entire score? And yeah, that can be a point of tension. So sometimes music licensing can come in to save the day. So
Which you need and you need to have and you need to do.
yeah.
All right, I want to share another piece of music. So David, let's go to the gray sound stage because this is the different perspective. So here we are at a different sound stage. Now tell us, DeAndre, what are we looking at? When would a room like this be used for recording?
I'm trying to get a sense of how big this room is.
So you would have your live musicians basically where David and I are sitting. So
yeah,
It's big back here. You could fit a grand piano back here if you wanted to.
yes, it's roomy. That's where all the snacks are. So, actually, the snacks are where you are, DeAndre, because it'd be too noisy and messy for us to eat here.
Oh, of course. I mean, the snacks are always wearing that. So
snacks are always around. So yeah, this is a great place where the engineer can do their magic and musicians can do their magic. And what's your role in this as the composer? Where do you fit into that day?
Well, to be honest, usually I'm stressing out somewhere and worried about like, oh my gosh, does a part need to be corrected on the fly? I'm like double checking things. I'm making sure like my session order is still set, and you know, just making sure like if they're opening coaching sessions, normally that's been done already, but like is everything prepped correctly? Are all the stems there? Like, do people have any questions? Are there passages that I know are going to be difficult that I need to get ahead of and address, you know, with the players beforehand, things like that. So like I'm usually cycling through many different things while also trying to, you know, take account of the music as it's happening. So yeah, I guess there's many answers to that question. But
And usually the acoustics are excellent, right, for recording. That you've got like top quality mics and top quality equipment there to have the absolute best sound
Right.
possible,
But
right?
yeah, you have all those things to capture the sound in the most faithful way possible. But a lot of it is also just the room itself, the way that it's built. Like all rooms are not equal, definitely. So it well depends on the scoring stage. Personally, I do. So
Considering how hard it is to get an hour booked for one of these rooms, it better be sounding perfect, right?
There is.
It's not like you can just, it's not like I can just make a call and say, "Hey, I feel like playing guitar. Can I have a couple hours of this room?" Yeah, sure, Dave. Come on in.
Come on in.
It's not easy to get access.
But hey, David, did you notice that my sound is a lot better this week?
Yes, I did. You sound great.
Can I just show off what I did? I got a new
Ooh.
Shure mic. And I have to say that I love this little Star Wars feature, and to
It's like
plug,
R2D2.
I know it's like R2D2, and I have to plug my little audio department. It's a little mom and pop shop here in Burbank, California, in the US of A. They gave me these little stickers, but I have to support the little mom. It was so nice to actually walk in, masked, and to be able to support a mom and pop sound
Very cool.
audio. They usually do professional sound for film and television, but they were happy to sell me a little Shure mic and on a rainy day here in California. So now that you can hear me better, we're moving up in the world. So let's go ahead. This is actually a piece that DeAndre scored for me. I did a short proof of concept film called a project called The Whatever Years for a new TV show. And we're gonna talk more about the whatever years on another show, but DeAndre came in and scored a gorgeous piece for me, and then we re-edited the film because we were shopping it and we got some notes and we had to reconfigure things, and then the piece didn't work anymore because the tone changed. But this piece was so gorgeous. I was so glad DeAndre kept it, because that just happens sometimes in projects. That's nobody's fault. It's just you're changing it to fit what a buyer needs, or for a different market or a different format. So this was for a dance sequence that happened in the whatever years. So go ahead, David, and let's play Dance Before the Fire, our second cue. And it's short, it's like 45 seconds. I love that. I forgot that how impactful that was. And sometimes it's so sad to lose a little piece. And I mean, the only direction I gave DeAndre is I said, I want something uplifting and hopeful. What was your process? Do you remember of scoring this?
I do.
Oh, excuse me. My mailman is here in the soundstage, but Charlie will make an appearance during a different show, my little pup. Sorry about that, DeAndre.
No,
Do you remember the process?
It was so long ago. I just remember I was still sort of, like my process was changing a lot, just because I remember it was sort of my transition period between like working off of that old laptop that I moved here with and actually like building a rig. So there were a lot of things in flux, and I remember I was like, oh, I'm a little bit intimidated, but I remember actually working on this piece of music in Logic. I was still writing in Logic at the time. I'm not working in another DAW. I'm working in Cubase, and I remember putting it together, and I remember presenting it to you. And then I remember I'm like, ooh, I'm also going to get like some cello on this, because as you know, you love cello, I love cello. I knew it was going to happen. So I remember I sent a message to my good friend and also very talented composer, Heather McIntosh, who I've also done some work with. And I was like, hey, Heather, can you do me a favor? Can you like play like a few bars? Like I'll put together some sheet music. And she's like, yeah, totally. And then so like I went over and I made, she just recorded it right in her little studio, and we just, it was really scrappy, and we just threw it together, made a rough mix, and that's what is presented right now. So I'm still really happy with how it came out.
I'm really
it's
happy
always
with
nice
it
to just have like musician members. So
and we will show the piece in a later episode and talk about the whole story of that project. But first, DeAndre, that's a lovely studio where you're at right now. But if you were to work and show your work at any place in the world and be sitting somewhere, where would it be?
I think we're gonna go with Skywalker Ranch.
Skywalker Ranch. Well, here at Hanging with Hilari, we're here to make dreams come true. David, I think we should put DeAndre at his dream location. So let's go ahead and we're going to move this party to Skywalker Ranch.
I feel like I should have had the music. Bum, ba da bum, ba da bum, ba da bum, ba da bum.
We're pushing our limits with all the copyrights. There we go. For those of you who do not know, this is Skywalker's sound of Skywalker Ranch, which is George Lucas's production facility, and he scores things here. Things are designed, mixed, and if anybody watching can add in the chat more things. There's a lot of magic that happens here. It's a very coveted place to be in Northern California. So DeAndre, now you're at Skywalker Ranch, at least virtually. So so tell us here, like what's the big dream? What's the goal that you feel like you're working towards?
In a lot of ways, I feel as if that answer is constantly shifting. I mean, I know, of course, I still want to do music, but I always am constantly being pulled in so many different directions. And I think it's interesting when I think back to when I first moved here to LA when I was working on my thesis for grad school. And I was one of those students, and everyone in my class knew it, my professors knew it. I would always talk about like, man, if I go out here, like I'm never gonna work in television a day in my life. It seems stressful. The time schedules seem impossible. Like it just seems like way too much for me. It's totally overwhelming. And then like the first thing I did when I got here was literally intern with Mac Quayle, and then go on to intern at the Television Academy Foundation, and then literally end up on the Emmys. And I'm like literally one of the shyest people. So it's just like everything that I said I wasn't going to do, I ended up doing. Like my first job was like writing additional music on like a DreamWorks animation television show, like a Netflix series. And like literally it just still to this day, most of my work is in television. But I'm also trying to branch out, do more like games and interactive media, especially because that's where my heart originally like lied when I started grad school. So, trying to, sort of get back into the groove. Recently just got like a PlayStation 5 to push me a little bit further, reacquainting myself with game systems.
Nice.
It's been a minute. And
so you're actually playing with PlayStation 5, or you're writing, or both?
Oh, I am playing. Trust me, I am playing the PlayStation.
Oh, we'll be talking later.
Yeah. So yeah, but it is a part of my workstation now. It's actually like on my desk. But doing stuff like that, and also just trying. I miss the process of actually like sitting down with like songwriters and instrumentalists and like writing and producing songs and starting to force myself, but just allow myself to inhabit that space again. Just because you know, I've gotten into such a rhythm of writing music for like media and just visuals in general that sometimes when I sit down to write and there's no picture in front of me, sometimes I'm just like, oh, wait a minute, well, what do I do? Because now I've just gotten so used to something else being there that's informing a lot of my choices. And I remember that before I really started writing music for media so heavily, I could just sit down and just really have fun and write whatever. And now I feel like when I try to do that, I place so much pressure on myself to already have an idea formulated before I sit down. And it's just like, well, why do I need to feel like that? I don't need to feel like that. So really just allowing myself to rediscover that part of my I guess my musicality where I can just, you know, just sit down, have fun with people. It's not serious. I don't have to show it to a director. It's for me, it's for my friends. I want to do an album one day.
Exactly. And I feel like because you do have such a very high bar and such a high standard, I know you're a worrier. And that's the thing is that you is that I think that's true for a lot of artists that they put pressure on themselves like this has to be fantastic. And then when you just let it go and you're able to just go with the flow, magic comes out.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something I want to show everyone. You guys, we have a very special behind the scenes of DeAndre's workstation. So first, this is DeAndre's rig, his desk at his home where all the magic happens. So DeAndre, do you want to explain what we're looking at here?
Oh yeah, sure. This is just literally this is right in my bedroom, right off the side of my bed. This is where I have been working ever since the pandemic started, and even a couple of months before that primarily. So yeah, this is a desk that I got like maybe what 5 or 6 years ago when I was still in college, and it served me well to this day. And I've got a computer off to the left hiding underneath there that I built shortly after I moved out here, maybe like at the beginning of 2018. And then I've got my MIDI controllers, like all of my screens. You see, like I've got a touch tablet there that's like got a program on it that allows me to communicate with some of the programs running with my computer. You see, I've got my PS5 and my Switch over in the corner. You see, I've got my multiple screens, my speakers for my sound, and I've got like an audio interface like down to the right, just underneath the desk where you see like the headphones and stuff like that's where the headphones are plugged into. And yeah, it's literally where I work and often where I play now, because I mean I'll just switch the screens over to the game systems and get going as soon as work is done. So
What's your number one game right now? Your fave, your go-to?
Number one game. That, you know what? It's very casual right now, but like right now I am super competitive still about Mario Kart. I had gotten really competitive last year and I fell off, but recently I've started playing with some friends of mine again, like back home in the Midwest. And yeah, like
Right
if you want to
on.
lose on Mario Kart, definitely play with me.
If I want to
David can
lose,
talk about games.
if I want to
David,
lose, I love it, but I'm not good. That's not. There's some games I'm good at. That's not one of them. But oh man, is it fun? Oh,
It is it is a lot of fun, and my roommate and I have a pretty big rivalry centered around that right now as well. But also, I just recently for the PS5 got a game, and it actually came out for the PS4, but I didn't have a PS4, so I didn't get to really experience it. But it's a game called like Dreams, and it's like it's a game where people just create content, and you can do whatever, and you can create games, but some people just create just sort of like art, and it basically you can do whatever. And then so within this game there's sort of like this music creation tool, and you can actually program and compose music in this DAW-like environment inside this
wow.
game. So recently I've been watching tutorials trying to wrap my head around like, okay, like how can I do this? And outside of, the controls being mostly like, well, entirely delegated obviously to the PS5 controller, it's just like a lot of the mechanics of how like the system or the software works is really similar to the DAW that I work in. So it's just like, they really thought this out. So I just think it's fascinating. I really want to write at least one piece of music using it, just for fun. So I'm still wrapping my mind around it.
Well,
That's
you
so cool.
completely lost me there because that is not my world. So I'm just going to lean into my misunderstanding and not understanding of all this by asking you to actually show us your Cubase, which is Cubase, and this is DeAndre's program. And so for lay people like myself who've never seen this, I don't know what I'm looking at all. For somebody who has nothing to do with music or computers, in the simplest terms, can you explain what this is?
Okay, so this is all the information visually that's been input into this program in
It's a
order
computer
to,
program.
yeah, it
right?
is a computer program. It's running on the computer, and this is where we actually create the music. So like some people so these little white lines are actually just like representation of like note values. And so basically it's just like, okay, this is a melodic line, or this is some sort of part, and like the computer is essentially just reading it and spitting it out. And there are a lot of different like soft synthesizers and like sample libraries and stuff that are responsible for like creating the sound. So like if I want one of these clips to sound like a piano, or one of them to sound like a bass or a guitar or a drum, or sometimes like if you see at the bottom, you'll see like waveforms, which is just like audio that was directly brought into the program. And then basically you just marry all those things together when you export all of this information out of this program, and you can synchronize it to your visuals, your film, your show. And so that's the simplest way I can think to
I
explain.
didn't understand a thing because I'm like, it's like the blue to me, like the blue's not piano and the orange
No,
is like
it
string.
is.
It is. So
You're getting it. Yeah, you got it. Like, so one of those blue
okay.
lines is a bass, and one of those blue lines is a snare for a drum, and another blue lines is
So each line is a different instrument then.
or
Is that right?
sound
Yep.
or
Mhm.
something. Like it could be anything.
Yeah.
Instruments is just the start of it. So he has a whole
Okay.
orchestra of instruments, things that sound like instruments, and things that are computer things.
Okay.
And
So I did get it.
yeah, and you can go into each one of those lines, and in each one of those lines is, and I've only watched others. I haven't even touched. I'm like someone who goes to the kitchen and watch the cook. But each one of those lines, you click in it, and there's settings and settings and settings and things that I don't even understand to make each layer just exactly what the composer wants it to sound like. So it is
I'm glad that you guys understand that. That's a good thing because then I can be like,
awesome.
make it pretty, make it sound fantastic, make people cry here. That's my job, is to tell you what the end result I'm looking for. All right, one last tech frame. Let's go ahead and show the VPro. Did I say that right?
Oh yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
what are we
Mhm.
looking at? Again, for
So-
us, for those of us who are not familiar with the VPro program, what is this? What am I looking at?
So basically, what's a good way to explain this? Easy. So when composers are writing whatever DAW that they use, whether it's a Cubase or Logic or a digital performer, there's many different options. But sometimes the instruments that we use can be more resource heavy than others. So we try to like offload some of that from the DAW having to deal with it. And then we use this program called like VPro that sort of acts like a sandbox for different plugins and libraries and things of that nature. And then so we just connect what is happening in this program, in this box. We just connect the sounds from this program into our DAW. So like Cubase and VPro in my system are constantly talking to each other and exchanging MIDI and audio, and it just makes things run a bit more smoothly than maybe Cubase having to do all of that, host the MIDI and the audio and run a lot of these resource heavy instruments.
Got it. Not really. A little bit. All right. So if anybody is watching, and if we do have composers watching and you have some questions for DeAndre, go ahead and put it in the chat. I am watching the chat live. And in the meantime, let's say goodbye to Skywalker Ranch. You will be back. You will be here for real one day. I just know that without a doubt, working on a project. So not every project works out and gets us to the Skywalker Ranch. Some projects just die before they're born, and that's when they end up in the morgue. So David, let's go to our morgue set with our scary morgue music. Okay. That's our morgue. We call this scene the scripts from the morgue or projects from the morgue, because as creative people, not everything you do makes it. Not everything it gets a life. So what are some projects that ended up in your own personal morgue, DeAndre?
Well, recently there was a project that I got involved with last year, and it actually ties back to the conversation that we were having about like rights and like owning music versus licensing it and getting compensated fairly for your music. And I had started a film, and at the time it was like my first feature film.
Oops.
I explored when it was all said and done with, maybe like uh,
Yeah,
am
you're
I still there? Are
you
we
are.
having
I think
technical?
we lost you for a second. I think your Wi-Fi is getting wonky, but
You're
keep
back.
going.
Okay,
You're
I'll
back.
try, I'll try to keep. Uh, but basically, after I'd written maybe 35 minutes to score, and we were already talking about, okay, let's have a mix, let's do this and that and the other. Something that I learned immediately is just like, we've had like conversations about like payment and blah 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 blah, and we have like some set terms, but we actually haven't really signed a final contract. We need to get this done, and so I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna send something over, and I'm just like, okay, it's gonna be like a licensing agreement, blah 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 blah, because I made this blah 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 blah. And the director was adamant that he was gonna own the score, that I would have no rights. It's like, no, you have to relinquish all the rights for this music. And I'm like, what? Why is it? It's an indie project. Why? There's what I'm making for this. I'm like, why would I ever do that if this actually goes somewhere? The back end is where I would make so much of my money. Why would I do that? And it's just oddly contentious just about me doing things just as simple as like releasing like a soundtrack for like the project in the future. And it's like, well, why would I want you to release a soundtrack? And like, what does that look like, you using my project for the music? I'm like, well, they're married together. I don't understand. And I was immediately like a red flag where I'm just like, And if you're battling me on this so heavily, I don't know if I exactly feel valued in this situation anymore. And it was a wake up call for me to leave, which was hard because I was really excited to be that feature. Like I said, at the time, it was my first feature. I walked away. There was just no way that was going to be my first deal, even if it got me somewhere. It's just like, I would rather stand up for myself now, just make a habit of it now. So it is just always consistent. You don't have to settle for terms that you don't agree with.
That's right.
You have to look out for yourself.
So directors
your
and
value.
producers out there, you've got to treat your people right, especially if you're low budget. It's like, it's got to be win-win for everyone, where they've got to still be able to profit off of things. And that's something that, they need to educate themselves about how that works. It's a difference between a buyout and exclusive rights and non-exclusive rights. And if you're not sure, ask your colleagues and they'll tell you what the right thing to do is, which is to let composers and musicians hang on to the rights unless you can pay them handsomely to take that away and for you to profit off of their hard work. We've got a question here from Jason. Jason wants to know what your favorite genre of film to compose for is.
not that I've had many opportunities. I've only got to do it once, but definitely sort of like anything like sort of like sci-fi, like
Oh
and
yeah.
or yeah, like those things. Like if I could ever do like a Westworld or a Black Mirror type show, I would be so happy. Even something like Mr. Robot or anything like that, I would just be over the moon. And I know that's not really the type of music that I shared with you guys today, but that is also something that I really enjoy writing.
Very
So
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I think well, you're gonna have to come back and share some sci-fi music with us because I know genre is like the hottest. It feels like the hottest thing right there. You know, everyone's writing horror, thriller, sci-fi, and we need good composers for that. So contact DeAndre for your next sci-fi project, and he will score the hell out of it.
Also,
Um,
I have to say I'm also really passionate about like animation, specifically like young adult animation. So I could also see myself doing like an animated show that has like a decent plot or following like recently I like kept up with shows like Adventure Time and Regular Show and Steven Universe and things like the Owl House and shows like that, which also they do a thing for me. And I just think like the music is fun. It doesn't have to take itself too seriously. It can be playful. You can sort of, just throw things together. And I don't know. It's something about that appeals to me. So there's that as well.
Speaking of fun, I think we should get out of the scary place. I asked DeAndre where his happy place was, and he could pick anywhere in the world. And DeAndre picked gardens in Shanghai, Shanghai Gardens. Now, sadly, it's raining in Shanghai. Oh, it's sunny there, but we're gonna get under a little rain cloud here,
Very good.
and we are going to, here's our beautiful, very peaceful Shanghai Gardens. I can already hear your score, DeAndre, maybe wind flutes. I'm not sure. Something peaceful and meditative. So this is so much better than being in that creepy cemetery, even though there was a fun zombie poking out. So all right, so this is our session where you can ask more questions here in the chat. Thank you so much, people, for being here and tuning in. Please subscribe so you don't miss our guests, because next week we're going to have Paul Racy from Sound of Metal on February 10th. And on February 17th, we have Darius DeHaas, who's a Broadway actor, singer, who was the voice of Shy Baldwin for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. On February 24th, we've got Jeanette Nguyen, who is a fashion designer and creative director. And March 3rd, Rosa Lee Tim, a deaf icon, performer, entertainer, who's going to share some of her work. So, DeAndre, thank you. Yes, we get, it sounds like rain, but it's applause for all of our guests. And you're doing so well for someone who's nervous and says that, that you like being tucked away into your bedroom. I think you're doing a great job. So I appreciate you, DeAndre. And speaking of that, for people who may be aspiring to become a composer, how how does one go about do that? People who want to write music, create music, how do you become a film composer?
Oh, I just I don't think there's one right answer to that question. There's so many different avenues that you can take to get into music, period, yet alone just film composing, like especially just being in LA now for 4 years. I've met composers for so many different backgrounds who ended up here for so many different reasons. Like some people were like, coming from like the electronic production world and she's like, oh, I'm gonna start doing film scores. Some people are coming from concert music or writing for theater and are like, hey, I'm going to do film scores. Or some people just really knew they wanted to do film scores and that was their calling. They immediately jumped into it. And so like with anything that like you are passionate about, it's just really taking the time to learn the language. And it's not just learning the language of how to write music, it's also learning the language of how to communicate with, people who are actually creating the content, learning how to, communicate with like producers and writers and learning how to talk to editors and sound designers and music supervisors, people who are going to be a part of your team when you are hired and you are ready to, create a piece of work. And I think those skills are valuable, and especially because I was, like I said, I'm shy. And so like when I was in college, I always regret that I didn't put myself out there as much. I wish I would have spent more time building those relationships with people who were, making content when I was in college, the student filmmakers, and like moving to LA and suddenly being thrown into the middle of it was a great crash course. But like, yeah, it was painful, just trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I really put myself out there? How do I communicate? Because it's like I can talk to other musicians and composers all the time. It's just like, yeah, we're speaking the same language. And I'm just like, and I like to think that we are still with like filmmakers and other people, but it's just like different. It's still a different mode of communicating. There's like, there are just many things that, you have to sort of step away from as a composer, because of course, like people appreciate music, but people want to talk about something other than music when you're talking to them about film. So it's being able to have like a well-rounded conversation. So that was a big thing for me personally.
Wow. I think that was the best answer to any question we've. I mean, if we're having, to our editing team, our we have a team of 1,000 editors that work for us. This is a big show. Mark that one down for the highlight reel, because that was so good. Because I didn't think of any of that, and it's so true. I always think that if you got to get good at music, right? Whatever your instrument is, get good at it. Learn music theory, learn how to compose, learn how to use that software. But half of it is people skills. And as you were saying it, I'm like, oh man, and I think that applies to a lot of things in life beyond just music. So wow, that was just a ridiculously good answer.
I've got a follow-up question from our mutual friend Trinity, who I met on Clubhouse, but actually DeAndre's friends in real life, who wanted me to put this out for Aspire. She's a very accomplished composer, but she said, if DeAndre, if you had to give 3 bits of advice for aspiring composers, what would they be?
That's a good question. I would say number 1 is definitely do your homework about running a business, because when you get into film scoring, it is more than just creating the art. You are literally, it is a mode of living. You need to know like the ins and outs, like legally, how you're making money, how you need to budget if you're like trying to record things. It's like there's a lot of organizational things that go into like film scoring. That is learning how to work with the technology, because it's just like, oh, what we do, people don't really like realize all the time that like what we do is very, very tech heavy. So just getting comfortable in that environment, because I know like people sometimes romanticize like, oh, just sitting down with like manuscript paper and just like writing by the fire and blah 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 blah, like old school.
Sounds very romantic.
But it's just like, and yeah, you can still do that, but 9 times out of 10, like people are gonna want to know what this sounds like practically, and a lot of that is actually being able to make a good mock-up. So also just know how to make a good mock-up. Spend that time, like even if you're not like write your own music, like take a piece of existing music, like take a piece of like classical music, take some MIDI and put it into a program and learn how to make it sound as polished as possible. And then by extension, you can apply that to your own work when you're composing. And I don't know. And then I guess just don't overthink the music, because that's just something that I tend to do a lot, where it's just like I get so caught up in my own head that like I would spend like an hour or 2 like agonizing over like maybe 15 seconds, like, okay, is this actually the right direction? And it's just like, you're not gonna know if it's the right direction until like somebody actually responds to it. And nobody is going to be able to respond to it unless you finish it. So you can save yourself time and save everyone else the time by just committing to the idea. And it's okay to fail. And if it's not working, you workshop it. That's what the whole process is for. So just like not being as self-conscious, it's just like releasing yourself from the music, not taking the feedback personally. That's a big thing as well. And so there are a lot of different pieces of advice, but those are just things that immediately come to mind. So
Get it
DeAndre,
out there. Create
that
the
is
content.
such good advice. Yes, exactly. There's so many artists that are precious and, oh, I can't show the script yet. It's not finished, or I can't play that piece yet, or I've got to work on this. And you're right. You just got to get out there and learn as you go. You do not want to end up in the morgue, you know, in that graveyard. We want to be in the happy place in Shanghai in the gardens.
Like we're doing with this show. We have our glitches here. We're learning, but we could have spent
We
6 months
are,
making it
yes.
perfect and then did it. And we said, we're not gonna make 6 months making it perfect. We're just gonna do it.
No, so we're learning as we go. I actually have better lights. I have my new mic, which I'm
Yes.
so excited about. But you know what? What makes the show is these guests. So DeAndre, I am so grateful for you coming on. You know, I know we're still early in our live stream process, but you're such a treasure and be able to share your talents with us and your words of wisdom to all composers who are going to watch this and forward this, I'm sure, for classes. So, David, let's go back to our talk show set so we can cheer DeAndre with our crowd and give him the round of applause that he deserves for having such a fantastic show. Thank you so much, DeAndre. And tell people how they can follow you. Where can they find you?
Oh yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, even though I promise I'm gonna get better at it. Like I am not the greatest social media person. Everybody has their flaws. I'm working on it. But you can follow me on Instagram at DeAndre. That's DeAndre_AT. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm pretty active there. Also, you know, if you want to get in contact with me, you can also feel free to reach out through me by visiting my website. I have a contact form, and you can find that at DeAndre. That's my name, DeAndre.AT. And so, yeah, definitely feel free to reach out. And if you just want to email me directly, you can also reach me at contact, that's CONTACT, at my name, DeAndre, DeAndre.AT. So yeah, feel free to get in touch.
All right, I just put that all in the chat. So there it is, nice and concise. So thank you so much, DeAndre James Allen-Toole, for joining us here and sharing your incredible music, scores, talents, insights, and advice. And of course, my co-host, David Maldo, check him out on his Let's Do video. He's got some new tutorials for you. We'll throw some links in the chat there. And subscribe and tune in next week when Paul Racy from Sound of Metal is here. But until then, I'm Hilari, and thanks for hanging with me. We're out. Come on, dragon. Yeah. Thank you. Breathe some. Is he breathing? He's breathing fire.